there? We'll just go from natural selection. Giving the example, we did the example of industrial melanization of moths, right? Am I audible, Colson? I don't think Colson can hear me. Okay, let's go to Arpit then. Arpit.
Yes, sir.
Yes, a quick summary from natural selection.
So can someone else do it, sir, today?
Today, you don't feel like it? Yeah, can someone do it? Who do you want to do, Arpit? Who do you want to nominate? I think Arpit's gonna
Anybody
nominate
like who
Matthew.
not did it recently, so can do it. He or she.
Anybody like Matthew?
Yeah.
All right, sir.
See, he said yeah. I don't know why, but I had the intuition that you will nominate Matthew only.
All right, sir.
Is this your picture, Matthew, on your profile?
No, sir. It's Luis Diaz.
Oh, okay. Like it's small, so I cannot figure it out. But
Oh, okay, makes sense.
the swag kind of matches with your voice. Okay, cool.
Wow.
Chalo, let's start.
Yeah. So we learned about natural selection, which is the process of artificially selecting. I'm sorry. We started with
That's artificial selection.
Yeah, artificial selection, which is the process of artificially selecting the genotype for a particular plant or animal species over generations by humans, which leads to the nucleation of.
So with artificial selection, we have not reached till the level of species yet. So because speciation takes a very long time, right? It can also happen like suddenly with respect to the evolutionary time frame, but even that sudden is very long. It's longer than a human lifespan. So we can say breeding. So we have managed to make different breeds of organisms, which necessarily all of them are not different species. Sometimes they are same species but different breeds among them, different varieties or breeds. When it is plant, we call it varieties. When it's animal, we call it breeds. Do you understand?
Yes,
like I gave you the example of the cats and the dogs that we have around. So, and also our cereals and plants, all of these. Yes, so that was artificial selection, which just proved the point that you can actually select certain genes or certain kind of phenotypes by a specific kind of breeding, allowing them to reproduce with a particular subset of organisms. That's all, right? Yes, sorry, Matthew. I have this bad habit, I take over.
Oh, it's fine, sir. You're the teacher anyway.
Okay.
So, yeah. Then we talked about industrial mechanization of moths and the
And then we went on to see, like, if you want to. So I'm just telling you how to, these skills also will help you when you are presenting in class. So if you are talked about artificial selection, then you can say that, if humans can do that, right? If we can do that with breeds, which is very, very close to making new species, can't nature do it in millions of years? So there we also learned that natural selection is also a thing. And there you can talk about species. Okay, anyways, yes, continue.
All right, sir. Yeah. So to continue with the side, so an example of natural selection we saw was the industrial mineralization of moths in the industrial revolution in England. So the pre-industrial era, around the 1850s, there were more species of white-colored winged moths in trees, and then after the industrial era, around in 1920s, dark-colored winged moths were more present more in a colony.
Yes.
It was observed. Yeah, this was observed, and this was due to this collection of moths showed the dark-colored winged moths showed a higher proportion of camouflaging after the industrial era than they did before the industrial era, And
Yeah.
before
So,
the industrial
but how was this selection happening, Matthew? What do you think? Why
yeah,
were
so
whites?
before
Yeah.
because white-colored winged moths used to easily camouflage in trees which contained lichen, which made them which made the trees look white. But
Yes. You're talking
after
about pre-industrial era. Yes.
pre-industrial, so due to that they could easily camouflage. But then after the industrial era, these lichens um, turn black because they are natural indications of pollution, and
No, no,
due to
lichens
industrial
died.
revolution,
There were no lichens.
yeah,
So
lichens
lichens
died, yeah,
don't.
basically.
Yeah, lichens don't survive in polluted environment. So if there is no lichen which are light colored, then the trees. First thing is trees are exposed. They are darker in color. Second thing was that the soot, the unburnt carbon, also started depositing on the tree barks, which both of these factors together favor the dark colored wings, dark colored moths.
Yes,
And the
so due to that,
other ones were being predated. Yes, sorry.
yes, yeah. So due to that, white-colored winged moths were easily prey to their predators, which are birds, and yeah. So due to that, dark-colored winged moths lived on for through that era because of because of natural selection.
Hmm,
So
right.
yeah, then we moved on to adaptive radiation,
Yes, and
which
before you move on to adaptive radiation, I just wanted to tell you that this thing is not in your NCRT, but always remember that for natural selection to happen, because nature does not have hands to pick, right? We can pick seeds or organisms and make them breed physically, but nature does it through a force called the selection pressure. Like in case of industrial melanization, can someone tell me what was the selection pressure on these moths? Which factor was the selection pressure?
color.
No, 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 not really. Color was actually facilitating that selection pressure. It was helping to survive under that selection pressure. But
Sir,
what was the
industries.
selection? No, even that also not was the selection pressures. Think of something. What was leading to their decline, from which they have to protect themselves and evade? Because industries only tell that now there is more pollution. So you can say that dark colored wings moths can easily camouflage, right? But why are white colored wing moths dying? Why are they dying? Just because they cannot camouflage?
They
What's
were
happening to them?
predated.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So the selection pressure here was predation. You understand? Predation by birds. So if you can, whenever you have to think what is a selection pressure, think that which factor the organism wants to evade in order to survive. So here the selection pressure was predation. Now to evade predation, they had to camouflage. To camouflage, white can camouflage better in the white background, dark can camouflage better in the dark background. And if external factor changes the background, then they will not be able to evade this selection pressure and will succumb to it will die. And the other one which will survive this selection pressure will flourish. You understand, everyone? Is it clear? Does it make sense why predation is the selection pressure?
Yes, sir.
Because that is what is directly affecting the population. Okay.
So
Yeah. In other cases, the selection pressure could be temperature, it could be reproductive fitness, it also could be pH, it could be nutrition, metabolism, able to find food, etc., etc. Okay. Cool. Yes, let's move forward, Matthew. Are you there, Matthew?
Yes, sir. 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we talked about adaptive radiation and Darwin's finches of the Galapagos Islands. So essentially, what he found out was the Earth that he found a variety of finches with like different types, different sizes of beaks, which were useful for different functions. So what he essentially told was evolution by natural selection holds true for all living systems in the world, whether they are unicellular or multicellular. And the earliest organisms must have been selected on the basis of their metabolic capacities. So that's essentially what Charles Darwin finalized. And then we talked about Australian marsupials, who are who have like who are equivalent, you could say, to their placental mammals. For example, like the flying phalanger and flying squirrels,
Yes.
who look yeah, and like the lemurs and spotted cuscuses, or the mouse or the marsupial mouses.
Yeah.
So yeah,
There's no
so
mouses, there's
adaptive
mice.
variation, mice. Yeah, sorry,
Mouse and mice.
very lapse judgment. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, so talked we talked about that, and we saw how radiation occurred over there, and then we also had a
Yeah.
question about a grassland and all
Yeah,
that.
I also told you that if
Yeah,
there are multiple adaptive radiations that happen in a particular region, then multiple adaptive radiations can also lead to convergent evolution, right? And
yeah.
this was clear? Or you want me to repeat
Yeah, this
this?
was yes,
Clear. So
yeah,
today
it
I
was
was
good.
okay, so today I was thinking to just summarize the biological evolution and then move forward. So we have studied all the evidences, all different types of evolution. Is there anyone still who's not convinced by evolution, or who does not understand evolution in the true sense, who still believes that all these words of mouth or these loose sentences that float around in the name of evolution are correct? So we broadly we realize that evolution is true. It has lots of evidences ranging from the field of molecular biology to the field of morphology, embryology, everything, organ system levels of comparison, etc. Second, we also realize that it's not very linear a progression. It is not like one organism evolved from the other and then the other. So there is something called common ancestry, right? So it's not as simple as we can just make it in a diagram where there is a monkey stands up, uh, puts a animal skin around itself, takes a stone, and then becomes a human. It's not like that. Third thing that we realized is that evolution also can take multiple mechanisms like convergent evolution, divergent, adaptive radiation through natural selection, but all are working together, right, in the nature. So if we talk about after all these things and all these evidences, all these mechanisms, if I ask you that when Darwin did all of this, he could only observe the nature, right? Part of this answer is already given by Matthew in his summary, but I think many of you have not paid attention, and I'm very sure that almost all of you have not paid attention to what Matthew said. Matthew said a very important, valuable sentence towards the end of his summary, but which I will repeat here, is that when Darwin observed all of this, he observed it in animals, right? In multicellular animals around himself, right? So he can talk
Yes, but
about
it also happens
evolution.
on unicellular animals as well.
Yes, he talked about the life that we see as of now. He talked about fossil evidences. He hypothesized many things which we now have proven true. In his time, no one knew whether that's true or just some words coming from a madman's mind. So everyone used to, you know, humiliate Darwin, especially the school of religions used to humiliate Darwin for what he's saying, because his theory goes right in the face of theory of special creation. But now when we have figured out certain more evidences, we know that he was a respectable man, so his respect and credit is due, you know even still after his death. But he could not in his time, and still this is the question, prove he could not prove, or this theory cannot prove without evidences now, that all said and done, okay, correct, I believe you, But when life evolved, life did not evolve as we see it now. Life evolved in some water, pond or ocean, and life evolved as unicellular ancestors of bacteria. Yes or no? Correct? So first thing that you have to understand is every organism evolves over time, even if it is bacteria. And this is not true that bacteria are less evolved than human in time frame. Yes, they are less evolved in terms of complexity and organization of their intracellular components. But if you see time, a bacteria was present before humans came, probably the first kind of life, and it's still present in 2022. So if it was a linear progression, all bacteria must have become multicellular by now, but that's not happening, right? We still have bacteria, we still have viruses, we still have protozoa, we still have algae, fungi, everything, which means every organism, and the bacteria of today of 2022 are more evolved than the bacteria of 1922 or 1822. They are multi-drug resistant, they are antibiotic resistant, right? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So if I
Yes, sir.
ask you, is a chimpanzee less evolved than human? No, it's as evolved as we are, but we are a more complex species. So the term that human are the most evolved species is kind of a misnomer. What do you mean by most evolved? Most means there is a threshold, there is a benchmark where every species will reach someday. He's the most meritorious student in the class. This makes sense because you have a criteria. He gets the highest marks, or he participates in the class discussions the most, etc. So every student can reach that level if they try. You understand what I'm trying to say? But when we say, you understand everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
but when we
sir.
say that humans are most evolved, it's a misnomer because humans are as evolved as chimpanzees are today in 2022. They are just a different species. For that matter, bats can do echolocation. Bats can echolocate. They send sound waves from their body. It goes and hits something and comes back, and bats can sense that. Aquatic animals can do sonar, the kind of technology which we fit in our ships to see what is at the surface. So sonar and echolocation, don't you think these are more enhanced abilities which humans don't have? A dolphin
Yes.
can do a sonar and a bat can echolocate. They're like super powers. If a human could echolocate, you will just not need a lot of things to communicate. So these are they looks like superpower, but the point is our evolution is very different. But we all in the time frame in 2022 are equally evolved, but the complexity differs. Some are more complex, some are less complex. Now the question is, when life evolved as unicellular organisms, did that life right from the beginning also went through natural selection? Did evolution happen there also, or it only started when multicellular life form came? What do you think? I would like if anyone apart from Matthew answers this, because Matthew already know the answer. Sorry, Matthew,
Sir,
nothing
we also
against you.
undergo evolution.
Sorry, Fatima, come again.
I think even they evolved.
You think over they evolved? Yeah, but do you think that they evolved through the same mechanisms that Darwin proposed that every life form present on the earth today evolves through? Do you think natural selection worked on unicellular organisms as well?
No.
No. Okay, and why don't you think so? Why do you think natural selection cannot act there? Because if you say natural selection does act, then I'm going to ask you what was the selection pressure. So if you say no, then I'm going to ask you, why do you think so? Anyways, you have to answer things. It's a discussion. Fatima is like, why did I even speak? No, but you're learning. See, those who are participating, of course, are going to be better explanators or even better writers in the boards. Anyone else apart from Matthew? Matthew, I'll come to you in the end, okay? I hope you're not offended.
Oh no, sir. No, I ain't nothing.
Yeah. Arpit, what about you? What do you think? Did unicellular organisms also went through the same natural selection, that like the kind of natural selection?
Yes, so they're going to the same process.
Okay, so we have two contrasting views already, which is very good for discussion. So Arpit says that yes, they have evolved through natural selection. Fatima says no. She thinks that natural selection might not have worked there. So Arpit, what's your rationale to believe that there was natural selection? And if there was, what do you think could have been the selection pressure?
So I got it.
You got it? What do you got?
Natural selection didn't work over there because there were no other organisms other than unicellular organisms.
Very good point. Very, very valid point, because see, we just studied that in melanization of moth, there were birds acting as a selection pressure. So that's why there was a natural selection of one or the other kind. When they are all just unicellular, prokaryotic ancestors of bacteria, there is nothing else. So what's going to put the selection pressure? Very good thought, but incorrect. So natural selection did happen. Fatima, but I'll give you the credit to think, but your thought process was correct, but your thought output is wrong. There can still be selection pressure even if only one type of organism is present on the whole planet. Can you think how and why? Arpit, what's your rationale to believe that natural selection happened? See, it's very easy to give justification for a right answer, but to think and try to derive logic for something that's not correct is what tells about your thought process. So 5 points to Fatima and then 5 minus for the wrong answer. I'm sure Fatima's not very happy, but Arpit, what do you think? Why do you believe natural selection happened? See, you have to defend your right answer now. You cannot perform bad being on the right side. Anyone can think? Matthew, are you there? Oh, Matthew just left or what? Okay. Sahel? Samaira? Am I audible at all, people?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you think of something, Fatima? Given that I'm telling you the answer, that it's
That there
natural
could be
selection. Yeah.
competition
They could be?
there could be competition between the unicellular organisms.
For what? For a trophy medal to become the Mr. Freshers or Mr. Bacteria of the
Or
planet? What?
like one unicellular organism can resist the environment and the other one cannot, and the one which cannot
But
will
what is
be
this resisting? You're right, but just think of some selection pressure. When you're saying resist the environment, what do you think they have to resist?
heat,
They cannot resist
temperature.
water. Perfect. See, brilliant. So natural selection can happen if, let's say, in earlier times, the environment was very, very hot, right? So whatever life form evolved was evolved around a particular temperature. Now let's say water started cooling down, but in some regions it is still hot, like geysers. You know that you still find bacteria in hot geysers where the temperature is above 100 degrees Celsius. Like water is literally boiling, but you find bacteria there. Don't you think it's amazing?
Yeah.
We boil water to kill bacteria to drink it. Now, if we had those kind of bacteria in our water, we will never be able to kill it even by boiling water. But thankfully, these bacteria are not found in normal conditions. In our rivers, ponds, lakes, whatever is our water source, they are not found here. So thanks to the nature for that. Okay, but they are still
So
found in
where are
hot
they found?
geysers. Hot geysers, very extreme conditions. They are called extremophiles. What does the word phile means?
Charge.
Loving.
And what does it mean extreme means?
Extreme, too much.
Hello, am I audible? I'm sorry, people.
Yes, sir.
Hello, am I audible, everyone?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just got a power cut here. So there was a power cut, then my Wi-Fi restored, and then there was another power cut back to back. And I think I said hello last time, right? And then I went back again. Okay, can you see the notebook again?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. So sorry, so sorry. We are struggling with some power issues here. Yes, Fatima, are you there? What were we discussing? Extremophiles, I guess, right? Yes. So what does the word extremophiles means? What do you think? The organisms that love extreme conditions are called extremophiles. Okay, so there are many kind of bacteria which only live in hot geysers, in like very very hot Okay, finally, and it happened again for the third time in a row. Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's. I think they're testing something or the other. It never happens like 3 times in a row, but I think there's some issue. Anyways, glad that I'm back. Okay. Yeah. Can you all see me?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No,
You
sir.
can hear
No,
me.
sir.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Just be happy. That's the best we can do for today. Okay. So yes, I was saying that these extremophiles can survive in extreme conditions, and like thermophiles live in hot. The word therm means temperature. There are acidophiles, even bacteria that can tolerate high acidity in water, and they can live in acidic ponds and acidic waters. There are halophiles which live in very salty environment, like full of salt, and where other life forms cannot survive, right? So
So
Fatima
does it
was,
mean
yeah, yes, Fatima, tell me.
if they go to some other temperature, they'll die?
Yes, so if they are acidophiles, they have adapted for acidic environment. So if you keep them in normal condition, like in a normal water, they don't know what to do, because what is normal? There is no concept of normal in biology. So you live in 35 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius, your body temperature. So that's normal for you, correct? But for a polar
Yes.
bear, a 37 degrees Celsius is way too hot, right?
Yeah.
For a walrus, 37 degrees is very uncomfortable. And on the other hand, for a snake, a desert snake, you know, 25 or 24 or 20 degrees is too cold. It will become
Yeah.
inactive, right? So it's all about how we have adapted to what kind of conditions, right? Yes, so we call it extremophiles because these conditions are extreme for in general life. So when we talk about life, we have a range from 15 degrees to 45 degrees is the range of normal life, 25 degrees being the average mean temperature of the planet, we call it. So you remember 25 degrees also your standard room temperature. In our experiments, when we write room temperature, we mean 25 degrees Celsius in quotes, right? So that's where if something goes sub-zero or something goes above 100 or something goes very high acidic or high salty, we call it extreme condition. So Fatima was very correct in saying that the environment, what did you say, Fatima? They're resisting their environment, right? If they can resist it, if they can live in that, that's one selection pressure. Very well. So that's exactly what happened. So natural selection happened through selection pressures coming from the environment. And if it is not coming from the environment, what else it can come from? I'm summarizing this whole thing for you so that the last dot, which was unconnected, that whether natural selection happened in prokaryotes or not, or early life or not, can also be clear. So apart from environment, something that is internal to an organism, something that is more fundamental. Let's say two type of, so environment will come in when one species living in Antarctica will be tested against the other species living in Africa, let's say. Okay. But let's say there is a species, individuals of the same species living in the same climatic condition. So does that mean that there will be no selection pressure and no evolution happening then? If all the bacteria are living at 37 degrees Celsius, then can you think of something, Fatima, that can still lead to evolution through natural selection? Or Arpat? See, if you can think like along this way, you got it. You understood evolution. Matthew, now let me come back to you. What do you think? Is there something else more fundamental to life that can act as a selection pressure for natural selection to happen?
Reproduction.
Reproduction. So what do you want to say with reproduction? How is it a selection pressure? Of course, those who cannot reproduce will not be selected. Their genes will not be selected. That's very obvious. But let's say reproduction is happening, because then only evolution will happen. Not being able to reproduce does not I can say, does not mean that there will be no evolution. It simply means there will be no organism to evolve. Simple. So when we say evolution, we see that, okay, reproduction is happening, sexual reproduction or asexual is happening. But what else through which organisms can have a pressure of being selected? Metabolism, can metabolism be one thing?
Yeah,
I think this is what,
metabolism.
yeah, this is what you also said, Matthew. I think you forgot your own sentence. So Matthew said in his summary that the earliest organisms underwent uh, like they were selected on the basis of their metabolic capabilities. Now you just have to imagine two bacteria. Remember I taught you lac operon, everyone. Lac
Yes, yes.
operon. Yeah, what was lac operon? Quickly. It was a kind of a gene cassette, I should say, that
It is
where
an
in,
arrangement of a polycystonic structural gene.
yes, where under a single promoter there were three genes, Z, Y,
Yes,
and
yes.
A. Yeah, and all these three genes were responsible for metabolizing lactose. So let's say there are two bacteria living very happily at 37 degrees Celsius in an environment where glucose is sufficient. So both of them are utilizing glucose, very happy. But one of these bacteria does not have a lac operon, but the other has a lac operon. It does not make any difference under the normal conditions, right? When glucose is abundant and glucose is present. Yes or no? But let's say now there is an issue with food. Now, food availability or glucose availability is affected, but there is lactose present. Now, do you think a normal bacteria or an ancestor of the bacteria that does not have a lac operon will be able to survive? Yes, no, what? Did you understand the question? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. So what do you think? A bacteria, let's say this, with lac operon negative and a bacteria which is lac operon positive. So under normal condition, normal glucose, tell me which one will survive? Both will survive, right? But under glucose deficient environment, glucose deficient and lactose present, now which one do you think will survive better, will be
Lac
selected?
operon positive.
Exactly. So this now will not survive, right? Only this will survive. Do you understand? Does it make sense, everyone? So this
Yes, sir.
particular bacteria got a metabolic advantage over the other one. And this was the first kind of selection that happened on the basis of differences in metabolic capability. Okay, so write down, in biological evolution, the evolution by natural selection, the evolution by natural selection happens to all living systems, happens to all living systems. Evolution by natural selection happens to all living systems. It must have started with the earliest cellular form of life, with the earliest cellular form of life where differences in metabolic capabilities where differences in metabolic capabilities originated. That's why we have such a huge variety of bacteria on the planet. Some bacteria, can even utilize sulfur. Some bacteria can utilize, cannot utilize sulfur. Some can flourish in the presence of oxygen. Some will die in the presence of oxygen because they don't like oxygen. They are extreme anaerobic. All sorts of bacteria are there. Okay, and to an extent where you will be amazed to know that scientists figured out a bacteria which, if you do not give that bacteria phosphorus, remember we studied DNA. Where was phosphorus present in the DNA? Quick, people, quick. I'm going to tell you.
I payment.
Yes, as a phosphate group, right?
Yes.
So if any organism has to replicate, it has to make more DNA. And to make more DNA, one raw material that you need is phosphorus. Am I correct? From the surrounding
Yeah.
or from nutrition? So if I do not give enough phosphorus to any organism, that organism will not be able to survive. Yes or no? Because it won't be able to replicate its DNA. So the cells division will not happen. The cell division cycle will be faulty. So if you go phosphorus deficient, you cannot make your DNA. Everyone understands?
Yes, sir.
That's what Hershey and Chase did. They labeled the phosphorus radioactive, and then the phage started using the radio labeled phosphorus to make its DNA. Remember that experiment as well? Yes,
sir.
no? Yeah. Now you'll be amazed to know that there is a kind of bacteria that has been found who has even adapted or learned to survive in the absence of phosphorus. Now you must be asking, okay, if there is no phosphorus, how is the DNA replicating? Yes?
Yeah.
So you will be saying that how many of you are familiar with periodic table? Periodic table. Have you studied? Of course, you must have studied periodic table in class 11th. Chemistry. Yes, no?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the phosphorus family, like if you see phosphorus, what comes beneath phosphorus? The atomic number of phosphorus is 15. Do you remember these things? No, no one remembers this. Okay, anyways, what comes below phosphorus in the same group? Arsenic.
Arsenic. Oh, okay.
Exactly, arsenic. And do you know arsenic is toxic?
Yeah, sir.
Ars
I've seen it in the
arsenic
news.
is arsenic is toxic to life. If you or me get in contact with arsenic, or any other life form gets in contact with arsenic, they die due to arsenic toxicity. This bacteria have decided or learned to use arsenic to make its DNA's backbone if phosphorus is not available. Forget about toxicity. This bacteria, because they both have the same valency, because they are in the same group, phosphorus and arsenic. Yes, arsenic is heavier than phosphorus, of course, but the valency is same. So just like you can make phosphate, you can also make arsenate. Yes, you understand? PO4 is phosphate, ASO4 is arsenate. So it uses arsenic to its advantage and can make its DNA backbone with arsenic. Of course, it would like to, if you give a choice between phosphorus and arsenic, this bacteria will choose phosphorus. All these experiments have been done, and it will choose phosphorus many times over arsenic. But if you do not give this bacteria phosphorus at all, it will not quit. It will not just go and perish. It will say, okay, I'll take arsenic. Right in the face of evolution, right? This is This is amazing kind of evolution, don't you think? So do you think that this bacteria is much more evolved than the bacteria that was present 2 million years ago?
Definitely.
Definitely. So evolution is very contextual. It happens all the time. And if I ask you, these arsenic tolerating bacteria, do you think they are less evolved than any other species?
No, you think they're more evolved.
Yeah, if you can say anything, they look like more evolved. How they can use arsenic? We cannot use arsenic being humans. We only rely on phosphorus, but they can use arsenic. But they can also do it because they are less complex. The less complex the organism, the more robust changes it can show and tolerate, because it has nothing to lose. It is just one cell. Any change you make, and if you survive that change, it's an evolution. If you don't survive, you perish. The more complicated you become, like humans, the more fragile you become in the system. Because if you tweak any, it's like a Lego. Legos. Suppose you make,
Yes, sir, Legos.
yeah, the bigger structure you make of Legos, even a single change or a single thing you remove, then the whole structure can fall, right? But if it's just 5 pieces of Lego making one structure, it is more robust. Do you understand? Complexity also brings fragility with it. So we are complex, but at a cost. We cannot change ourselves so fast. We cannot evolve so fast like bacteria. You understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
I'm giving an example. COVID. Why COVID could create such a menace? Because it attacks, it recognizes and attacks a very important receptor in our body, which is called ACE1 receptor. It's very common, and it's very, very crucial receptor in our cells, especially in our lung cells, in our respiratory cells. So this COVID has figured out that receptor. The only way it recognizes our cell is through that receptor. Now, if we were bacteria, we would have just changed the receptor, right? Brought something else. So you recognize me, I paint my face again. You again recognize me, I paint my face again. You understand? This is what a crosstalk between a bacteria and a virus happens in nature. But we are humans. We are bound by the complexity. If we change or remove or mutate that receptor, we will die. It's that crucial for our physiology. So we cannot do that. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
With great complexity comes, great vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
You can quote Rahul Kushwaha for that. Anyways, so I hope you understand evolution now in a broader context. So you understood that natural selection happens regardless whether you are prokaryote, eukaryote, unicellular, multicellular, whatever, right? The selection pressures might differ. And now let me come to the next point. Do you also think, write down the question, it is a board's question. Do you think simpler organisms evolve faster or slower? Comment. This is exactly the question. So what's your idea? We are talking about rate of evolution now. So one thing is evolution is happening, but do you think that it is happening faster or slower for some organisms, or is it happening at the same pace?
So can you repeat the question?
The question is, do you think for simpler organisms, evolution is happening faster or slower? Comment or justify whatever you think. So justification has to come with the logic. That's what. So what do you think, Matthew? Others should also. Sahel, why are you silent? Don't wait for me to call your name. Just pitch in. Jump.
Sir, I think maybe because of the simpler structure of the organism.
Yes. But just because of the simpler structure of the organisms, how can you say that evolution? So what are you saying? Evolution happens faster or slower in them?
If you take the example of amoeba,
Okay.
for getting food, they use a simple mechanism that is just using their I forgot the name. What was this?
Pseudopodia.
Yeah, pseudopodia. They can use pseudopodia.
But the same mechanism is used by our neurons, kind of. Similar mechanism is used by our neurons to make connections. So it's not very simple also. It also involves a lot of complex things happening inside the cell. But let's assume you're right. They are simpler. But how can you say that just because they are simpler, they evolve faster? That's, you need to say something more. Yes, Fatima, you also said you are also trying to say something. Tell me.
Sir, their lifespan is less, so that's why they can evolve faster. Bacteria.
Very good. More than lifespan, I think you should say life cycle. Remember, I said that lifespan, both, lifespan, life cycle, you can use both, but life cycle makes more sense because it is in the reproductive context. For a bacteria, the lifespan is the life cycle, right? There is no difference because bacteria reproduces through binary fission. So, okay, and it's immortal. It does not die actually naturally. It dies if we kill it. But you're correct. So what happens? Why evolution? Why are you connecting evolution with lifespan or life cycle? It's simple. Connect the dots. What leads to evolution? Generations.
Reproduction.
Yes. So you can only evolve as a species. You cannot evolve as an organism. Like I cannot evolve. Like Rahul Kushwaha cannot be an evolved Homo sapiens than others. But if I continue to produce my generations and generations and generations and keep passing on my genes, in some of the generation, maybe some mutation that I have, I'll pass on to my progenies, which might help them with something or might not help with them with something. Depending on that, they will pass on certain mutations to theirs and theirs and theirs. And after 100 generations from now, my successors, 100 generations forward, will be better adapted maybe or for something. That's evolution. Do you understand? But Rahul Kushwaha perished long back. So it was just one connecting link in this broader chain of evolution. So you have to reproduce. Now, bacteria reproduce every 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Now that's where they have the benefit. To get 1 lakh generations, a bacteria just need, a few years. But to get even like 10 generations, we need decades and centuries. Yes or no? Yes, everyone understands? Yes. So write down. Simpler microorganisms that reproduce faster. Viruses reproduce the fastest, right, and make millions of copies. That's why in December 2019 we got COVID. Just after few months we got another strain, alpha, beta, delta, kappa, gamma, omicron, epsilon. All these strains just could come in, like how much time it has been. We already have more than 25-30 strains, different types of coronavirus, which again, like most of our antibiotics are in some or the other way effective towards everyone, but the rate of effectiveness is different, and there is possibility that some strains might evade all our all our vaccines. So we have to make different kind of vaccines depending on how fast they are mutating, how fast they are changing, how fast they are evolving. Does it make sense to all of you? We cannot evolve that fast to fight the bacteria, to fight the virus. So simpler microorganisms that reproduce faster due to a very small life cycle or lifespan can evolve faster, can also evolve faster, or can, before evolve, write down, can adapt faster through genetic inheritance. Through genetic inheritance. Okay. Therefore, they get selected by nature faster. Therefore, they get selected by nature faster. You know, when I don't know if you know this or not, when Omicron came, it actually defeated out or outcasted most of the alpha strains. You know why? Or the beta or the delta strains. You know why? Of
Which had a better rate of reproduction.
It has a better rate of transmissibility and reproducing inside the cells, of course, yes. It was more infectious, though it was less lethal. And we still cannot say about the lethality, you know, I'm not clear about the data though. But yes, it seemed that it was less lethal and it was more transmissible. And that's why the other competing strains could not get selected. It could get just the moth. Can you just relate these things? For the moth, it was happening in 70, 80 years. For a virus, it is happening within months. Can you now see with your eyes that some things are evolving faster?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these things are always in front of our eyes. We never think about it in this context. Okay. So selected by nature through natural selections and evolve faster. And evolve faster. So in the biological evolution section of your NCERT, there is an experiment that they have suggested. Let's say there is a colony of bacteria A growing on a given medium, then there is a change in the medium, and only the part of population that have certain mutations or changes or variations can now survive, but still you find some surviving. Okay, so which means it's a different strain which has more fitness. So please read that part from NCERT and write down the notes and come back to me if you have any doubts regarding anything. So to summarize, basically we learned, apart from learning about Lamarckism, which we are not going to talk about in detail, basically we learned that there are two pillars of theory of evolution. Can you tell me what are those two pillars of Darwinian theory of evolution? And let me tell you, it's no longer called Darwinian because we have made a lot of changes. We have corrected Darwin. Darwin was a phenomenal scientist and an observer and a naturalist, but again, he was a human, so he was also, you know, incorrect at many places. So two pillars of, now we call it Neo-Darwinian theory of evolution. Neo means the new, evolved. So even the theory of evolution is evolving. How cool is that?
That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny, right? So the processor needs some processing to process better. That's like that. So Darwinian theory is now called Neo-Darwinian theory of evolution. And another interesting thing is like a school of thought is also that we should also make changes to theory of Lamarck and remove all those vague, absurd claims and put it like try to understand it more molecularly, because people also believe that there are proofs on a molecular level for theory of Lamarckism, which means, and it's called neo-Lamarckist view, where they say that not about the organs, but at a molecular level, there are certain things that we kind of acquire in our lifetime, which does not affect our genes directly, but we can still pass them on. And a lot of studies like that has been done in animals where it suggests that if a mother is depressed or afraid or mentally not stable in her life, then the vulnerability of the kids to get these mental disorders or these mental traumas increases. Now the genes are not affected, but there is something called epigenetics. If any one of you is interested in doing some, you know, outside your coursework thing, go and figure out, just read about epigenetics. It is a new, not new, but fairly new branch of science, which is a part of genetics. It's called epi because what does the word epi means? Epidermis, epithelium. No, over, above, right? Outer, you are correct. So epi means above, and genetics means the classical genetics. So it is above genetics. So there are certain things which we cannot understand only by studying genetics. It is above genetics. You know, females can pass on to their kids some behavioral characteristics without changing the gene, which they acquire during their lifetime as mothers. So that's amazing, right? And it's kind of a resurrection of the, sorry?
Possible. How is that possible?
Yes, that's possible by some marks, some epigenetic markers. So there are proteins, there are majorly proteins which interact with DNA. Okay, they are called epigenetic marks. And these epigenetic marks have this capability to either silence a gene, overexpress a gene, underexpress a gene, you know, without changing the allele, without changing the gene itself. So there is no change in the DNA. The DNA sequence is completely same for both the organisms, but in one there are different epigenetic marks, and in one there are different epigenetic marks. And on the basis of that, the gene expression from the same gene will differ. And if that gene helps you, in some kind of behavior or some kind of emotion, then you will see that change even without changing the genome. So the classical genetics view
So,
is, yes, Arpit. Let me
sorry
just finish
to,
this.
yeah, sorry.
So the classical genetic view is that any change in behavior or morphology or anatomy can only occur if there is a change in the DNA. Correct? That's what I have told you till now, and that's what Neo-Darwinian theory also tells about. But now when we are calling it Neo-Darwinian, we are also trying to incorporate some aspects of Neo-Lamarckism, which is this, the epigenetics part. Yes, Arpit, now come with your question.
Yes, sir. I was asking like the characters which are expressed in the kids, sir, like they are acquired or they are hereditary. Like their mother also had from
They
their
are
parents.
acquired. If they are hereditary, then there is no point in making it different from genetics, right? If they are hereditary characters, then it is genetics. It is classical genetics. Anything, remember I told you mutations are also only inheritable when they happen in the gametes, right? If some mutation happen in my skin cells mutated, but my gametes are still having the same genes for the skin cells, then my kids will not get that mutation. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
For any mutation to get inherited, it has to happen in the gamete. It has to reach the gametes. It has to be strong enough to reach the gametes. Otherwise, it does not make any sense. But yes, some characters which have been studied, mostly these characters are phenotypic behaviors which actually are acquired, and then they can be passed on to the next generation. So this is basically what Lamarck also said, right? Acquired characters can be passed on. But he talked about some very vague, like long neck, big muscles. Now we know that that cannot happen, but it's maybe what Lamarck did not know. We are going to know now that at a molecular level, some things of that sort are happening. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. So I would love to, discuss with you these very interesting research papers and these findings, but little bit go and figure out what is epigenetics. If you are interested, it is away from your syllabus, even away from your entrances. Now the two pillars of Darwinian theory of evolution, quickly tell me. One is natural selection, right? That natural selection happens regardless. The other is branching descent, that it's not linear like we show it, and from chimpanzees humans came. No, there was a branching always. Chimpanzees and humans both are parallel. They always evolved parallel. Like say branching descent means like this. So there is an organism A, remember, then this will diverge into B and C. It does not mean that B came from C, but B and C had a same common ancestor back in time. Then this will diverge again. You understand, everyone? What does it look like? Does it look like a branch to you?
Yes, sir.
This is called branching descent. So evolution always works by branching descent and natural selection, not by a linear progression and just random things happening. Okay. So these are the two pillars of Darwinian theory of evolution. Now, even before, like we were talking about Lamarck, right? You know what did Lamarck say? What did he say? Just to quickly summarize Lamarckism. Lamarck said that it was before Darwin. Okay, so Darwin kind of busted two things. Lamarck, he actually upsetted lot many people than he thought. He first um, upsetted the believers of theory of special creation. Then he went on to upset the believers of Lamarck, because Lamarck was a naturalist. He was not a religious school of thought. He actually gave some proofs, observation driven proofs. Now, according to him, they were proofs, but according to Darwin, they were not proofs because there were flaws in his observation. Now, Lamarck said that giraffes, giraffe has very long necks.
Yes.
Oh
Taking
yes,
an example
that
of,
giraffes didn't have a long neck before they evolved to have a long neck.
which was true. The ancestors of giraffe were just like horse. How long does a horse neck is?
Not very long.
Not very long, right? But if you see a horse and a giraffe, you see very long neck. So Lamarck said that the ancestors of giraffe did not had long necks. Again, he kind of busted the special theory of creation. But then he said, then people ask, then how do giraffe have long neck? So he said that evolution is driven by use and disuse of organs. And his observations were based on just common scenarios. Like if I start training myself to play good football, then I have to train my legs specially, right? A lot. If I want to be a sprint runner or a marathon runner, I have to train my body in a certain way where my body will change both physiologically and physically. If I want to become a bodybuilder, I need my muscles to be pumped up, and I want to make a build. Correct? Yes or no? And it is doable, right? It is doable. You can do it to certain degrees. And
Yeah.
also, if you from the childhood, if you are very, very active and always hanging around, and literally means hanging from a pole, from a tree, doing gymnastics, doing stretching exercises, your height is more likely to shoot up, right? Yes or no? But again, it has a limit till where it can go, and that limit is decided by genetics. But it's not also very, very absurd to see. It is actually very common. You might have seen that the parents are not that long, but the kid is very long, tall, right? Have you not seen that happening? Both the
Yes, sir.
parents were not tall, but the kids were tall.
Yes,
So
sir.
because the kid was very active, and even among the kids, you see that one kid was not that tall, other kid was very tall because one kid was very active. And we know that skin color and height are also affected by physical or environmental factors. So he just observed all of this, Lamarck, and he was very, very intelligent enough to observe these things and say that giraffes also got long neck because they started attempting to stretch their necks to eat the very, very fine, delicious, and soft leaves at the top of the tree. So what happened according to him was that the leaves on the lower side was eaten more and got finished. So trees started having leaves on the like now trees have nutritious leaves on the top. Now to reach that top, just like to reach the top shelf of your cupboard, you will stretch your arm, right? So giraffe started doing that, and every day for hours they are doing that, and hence every giraffe got a few inches longer neck than the previous generation, and that trait got passed on. So if let's say I am a giraffe and I managed in my lifetime to stretch my neck by 6 inches, so I'll pass that on. So my progenies will be born with a 6-inch longer neck already, and then they will continue to do the same thing and they will add to it and pass on to the next progeny. So this is what he
But
thought, and
this is
yes, Father.
this is an acquired trait, right? How can it be passed on?
Exactly, it cannot be. That's where the theory was busted, and the theory is wrong. The theory is not true. You cannot prove it true. It's a wrong, false theory. But we still have to give the credit. Remember, I told you in science, the respect is not given to those who are always correct, but to those who are
Thinking.
thinking, for those who are pioneers. Even if they were incorrect, they put the field on something. They've asked a question, right? Their answers were incorrect, but if they would not have asked that question, we would never have reached the right answer. So that's where we give the respect to. So Lamarck is respected for that, but his theory was busted and it was wrong. So it cannot happen. Just because you are using or disusing your organs, you cannot pass it on or you cannot develop new organs. So for that matter, if a human wants to fly, and every day I'm just going on the first floor and jumping from there and trying to flap my arms, thinking that one day I will grow wings. So it will not happen, right? Even if I do it every day,
Yes, it won't happen.
it won't happen, because clearly use and disuse of organs do not drive evolution all the time. Okay, and you cannot get new organs at your will. You can only get it if there is a mutation in your genes, right? But you cannot get it because you wish you had. So Lamarck, write down the theory of Lamarck stated. The theory of Lamarck stated. It's also called Lamarckism, just like Darwinian or Darwinism. Lamarckian theory. The theory of Lamarck stated that evolution is driven by use or disuse of organs at will. This is where he was wrong. It does
Can you
not
repeat
happen.
the points one more time?
Yes, theory of Lamarck stated that evolution is driven by use or disuse. I'm also writing it on here. Use or disuse of organs at will. And this, when he wrote this theory, he named it as doctrine of desire. What an animal desires, what an organism desires, it becomes doctrine of desire, which Darwin very politely busted and said it's not in control of the organism to desire something and become. For that matter, a fish, when fed up of being a fish, would desire to become a bird and become a bird, right? It will not happen. A fish will always be a fish until there are major changes in new species, but the new species will also be of fish, right? It will take a very long time for a fish to become an amphibian. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So use or disuse our organs at will, doctrine of desire was Lamarck's theory. Okay, so write down, in other words, the theory said or stated that acquired physical characters, write down, acquired physical characters can be passed on to the next generation. Okay, is it clear, everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Write down, this theory was proven to be wrong. This theory was proven to be wrong as only genetically heritable characters can be passed on. As only genetically heritable characters can be passed on to the next generation. Only genetically heritable characters can be passed on to the next generation. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And what do I mean by genetically heritable characters?
Mutations.
Yes. So evolution is driven by, write down, evolution is driven by mutations. This is one way. Mutations mean change your genetics and change yourself. So that's what the rule is. It's not like desire and change yourself. It's often said, no, don't just desire something, work hard and deserve it. Yes or no? So it's same for the nature. They say that don't just desire, get some mutations and deserve it, just like that. So what is mutations? You all know. I don't have to teach it again. What is mutation? Quickly, how do we define mutations? We have already defined it. Anyone
Sir,
would
it
like
is a
to define?
sudden,
Yes, it is the sudden.
sir, it is,
What?
sir, it is sudden alteration in the DNA sequence, which can cause in the change in the genotypically and phenotypically.
Yes. So it's a sudden, random, inheritable change. It can get inherited because it's the change in the DNA. But given the condition that this mutation is reaching the gametes, yes or no? That's only it can reach the next generation. Correct? So it's yes. And there are two things. So one thing was natural selection. The other thing was mutation. Now mutation sometimes is different because mutation can happen in a very, very major protein also, all of a sudden, because mutation is random. I don't know if I've given you this example, but mutation is like, if you want to understand, I told you that almost more than 90% of the mutations in nature, or more than 98%, I will say, are actually not useful. They are harmful mutations. Did I say that? Most of the mutations are harmful to the organism. You know why?
Yeah, you said that. And then there is proofreading also.
Then there is what?
Proofreading.
Yes, that's there. But why mutation? So mutation means that proofreading failed. That's what mutation means, right? You failed to proofread and put the correct thing in. That's why mutation happened. So by mutation, I mean that it's failed a proofreading. It happened. It's a change in the DNA that has happened. You cannot do anything about it now. But why mutations are mostly deleterious or disadvantageous is because an organism is a perfect thing, right? Like not perfect, but a very well functioning thing. Think of an
Yeah.
organism as a painting. Have I given you this analogy?
Yeah.
Yes. So think of an organism as a painting, a complete painting with everything in its place. We have eyes, ears, hands, nose, everything in its place which is required. Now something suddenly changes. It is equivalent to you put a blindfold on, take a brush, paint brush of any size, dip it randomly in any paint and touch it anywhere on the painting. Most of the times you will just destroy the painting, right?
Yes.
You will not add on to it because it's so random. You don't know what brush you chose, you don't know which paint you dipped in, you don't know where you have to touch. But just by random chance, it is possibility that you made a, I gave you this example same, so I'm just repeating the same example, that there is a tree with a green color shade you used, and you took the right brush, dipped it in green color, and also touched it at the right place where the tree is in the painting, which enhanced the green color. So it
Yes,
added
sir.
on, but the chances are very less, right? If you do it out of 100 times, more than 97-98% of the times you will end up destroying the painting. That's what happens in nature. But at the one time where it worked, it can give you more functionality, right? It can enhance the organism. And sometimes due to mutations, very big changes happen in a very short period of time, in just 1 or 2 generations. Now that's amazing power of mutation. If it works against you, you are gone. For example, sickle cell anemia. A single point mutation happened in sickle cell anemia, right? One
Yes.
Yes, sir.
glutamate changed to valine and the system is screwed, gone. Now we have a disease. But if it works for you and you get a new advantage, let's say a bacteria with a mutation just got resistant to antibiotic, miracle. Now that bacteria can live happily in the antibiotic. It will not be killed. Is it clear, everyone? Just an example.
Yes, sir.
So mutations can lead to very big changes, very big steps in evolution. Okay, that's why it is called saltation. Saltation means single step, large changes. Okay, so I'm giving you a homework. What you have to do is, I want to finish this chapter in the next class. So for that, you have to